Hey, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, SBC 209, whatever time you're consuming this little artifact of academic media. I am once again Vic McInnes, your interpersonal communications instructor, coming to you live on video from the partly cloudy campus of Aiken Technical College here in the heart of the bustling Graniteville, South Carolina metropolitan area. Remember, Aiken Technical College, your number one choice for higher education in Aiken County. Class, today we're going to continue to talk about public speaking. Again, we have SBC 205 here on campus where you get practice and you really, and it focuses totally on public communication and giving a good speech. I'm going to highly recommend that to you. But we're going to continue to talk about public speaking today and specifically delivering a speech. Okay? And again, this isn't comprehensive. In fact, we're probably going to skip chapter 11 and 12 altogether. But there'll be more on that next week. So, let's talk about public speaking. What's the first thing, when I look at people and I say, what do you think of when you think of public speaking? I rarely get a positive response. I rarely have people say, oh, I really like the challenge. I really enjoy speaking to a large group and communicating with a large group at one time. I get things like, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to die. I hate it worse than it. Here's an old Jerry Seinfeld joke. And this was based on a true fact. There was a survey done that said people were more afraid of public speaking than they were of death. So at a funeral, the guy in the casket is better off than the guy giving the eulogy. Okay? We all hate public speaking. And the reason we hate public speaking is because, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the one is usually summed up in, well, I have stage fright. You don't have stage fright. In fact, we don't say stage fright. We're going to say performance apprehension. Here's why. If you look up fright or if you look up fear in any dictionary, it's going to say danger, physical threat, significant chance of injury. I've been doing this. I've been teaching public speaking, interpersonal communication since 1986. I have seen tens of thousands of speeches. I've never seen anybody get hurt giving a speech, ever. There is no threat of physical injury. You know what you should fear? You should fear bears. You ever seen a bear up close? In the wild? I mean, we were up in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Me and my dad spending a week hiking, and we pulled over and parked on the side of the road to have lunch. And a big-ass 800-pound brown bear just came walking out of the woods and walked within about 3 feet of the car. I could see the big claws and the teeth and those things scare the hell out of me. Speaking in front of a group, I've never been scared. I've been apprehensive. Okay? I do get performance apprehension. First time I walk into a classroom when there's, if you remember the before times, when we actually went to class. First day, I would have performance apprehension. That's why my first day is very organized and I do the same thing so that I don't have to worry about it. Okay? But many of you think that anybody who has performance apprehension is not going to be a good public speaker. E.R. Robinson, who did a ton of research on this back in the 60s and 70s, E.R. Robinson came to the conclusion that the complete absence of feelings of apprehension is neither normal nor a desirable effect. Everybody's seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ben Stein, the history professor, the government professor, that stands up there going, and this was what? The Laffer curve. That guy. We've all had that guy. Hopefully I'll never be that guy. But that person has no performance apprehension. Everybody knows Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan. If you go back and watch that Bulls docuseries that came out on ESPN, it's really good. But one of the things that Jordan gets talked to about is his gambling issues. And his answer is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spoil it. You have to go watch it. But I will tell you what Charles Barkley said. Charles Barkley, in an interview, got asked if he had a gambling problem. And Barkley said, no, I don't have a gambling problem. The guy said, well, I've heard that you and Jordan bet $5,000 on a putt. Is that true? And Barkley said, yeah, that's true. We bet $25,000 on a putt once. And he said, the reporter goes, you don't think that's a problem? He goes, you have any idea how much money I make? $25,000, not a big deal. He said, second of all, if I don't have a stake in the game, I don't play well. And that's a real simple statement of fact. I mean, we've all, for those of you who have ever competed in organized athletics, any organized sort of competition, those days going into the competition that you're not engaged with it, that you're not excited about it, that you're not a little bit apprehensive about the outcome, you don't do well. So performance apprehension is not something to be ignored. It's not something to be afraid of. It's actually something to be embraced. Okay? Let's get some things straight before we get started though. First of all, there is no hacks to get over performance apprehension. I used to tell people and they got really pissed off at me, so I stopped saying it. They would go, well, how do I get over stage fright? And I went, well, we don't call it stage fright, we call it performance apprehension. How do I get over performance apprehension? And I would go, here's one quick trick to get over performance apprehension associated with public speaking. And they go, okay, what is it? And I go, public speak a lot. Because the more you do it, the more you know that it's something you can deal with. It ain't going to kill you. Second of all, people who suffer from extreme performance apprehension are not mentally ill. It is not a sign of some sort of mental defect, nor are they destined to be bad speakers or bad performers. Back in the 80s, there was a guy, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. Before he went out on the field at the beginning of a game, playing professional football, you would see him with his head stuck in a trash can because he threw up before every game. That's how performance apprehension manifested itself for him. Okay? Third thing, you're going to notice your mistakes a lot more than the audience will. Because we'll discuss why in just a second, or do we? No, we don't actually discuss why in a second. Okay. So what happens is when you, I'll get to it in a second. Trust me, you were more aware and more attenuated to what's going on in your body than anybody out there is. Like I said, I've watched tens of thousands of students give speeches, and I've never once said, his palms are certainly sweaty. I bet he's nauseous. They can't see what you're experiencing. And when you think your voice is going through puberty again, they won't notice. Shaking hands, they're not going to care. They're not paying that much attention. Bottom line is, your performance apprehension is not an external, it doesn't externalize itself. It's all internal. So once you get used to it, you'll be fine. So let's talk about why we have. First of all, there's biological reasons. Back in the day, when we were living in caves and painting on walls and saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths roamed the plains, we evolved a defensive mechanism to survive because man has never been an apex predator without the use of tools and other essentials. Toe to toe, there's a whole lot of different animals out there that beat us, okay? And we had to develop some sort of strategy and evolve some sort of mechanism to help us with that. And what it was is usually referred to, you hear it talked about flight or fight. Well, it's actually flight, fight, or freeze. So you're caveman Thorg walking across the plains, and you come upon, you see 3 or 4 saber-toothed tigers out there. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to need to run really fast. You're going to need to fight really hard, or you're going to need to get up against the one tree in the entire area and just plant yourself and try to stay still so hopefully they'll walk past you. Remember that scene in Jurassic Park where Sam Neill tells everybody that if you don't move, the T-Rex can't see you? And everybody, okay? So what your body does is it dumps a ton of adrenaline, it dumps a ton of red blood cells, and it dumps a ton of your internally stored sugars into your system all at once. And all of that makes your palms sweaty because there's some sweat glands on the palmar surfaces of your hands and feet. And yeah, I had one student get to, when I say, yeah, palmar surfaces of your hands and feet, she goes, yeah, my feet were so sweaty. I've never had that happen before. Okay? That help you grip a weapon or grip rocks and stuff so you can run fast. All the blood vessels in your extremities, your arms and your legs, are going to constrict, forcing all the blood into your core. That does two things. Number one, if the tiger rips your arm off, you're not going to bleed to death immediately. You'll be able to continue fighting. But also, all your internal organs have got all that blood packed into them. So if you do get hurt, they'll continue to function. That also, in the freeze mechanism, allows you to, all that blood is in your internal organs. You don't have to breathe as deeply. You got all that extra red blood cells. You can go from to short, shallow little breaths that you can do quietly. Okay? Again, your stomach is going to shut down digestion to save all that energy for other things, so you're going to get some butterflies. All that adrenaline will cause you to be a little nauseous. All right, all the muscles in your core are naturally, all that adrenaline is going to cause them to tighten. So you may find you need to go to the bath, feel like you need to go to the bathroom more than normal from all that tightening and constricting. All of that is completely natural and you can't stop it. Okay? But we're going to talk about the nice thing about that. There are previous experiences. Okay. The people I hate most in the world, that's not true. I'm going to overstate it. Somebody I don't like, I really, really don't like. And I have a cousin who just retired from this job. Middle school English teachers. And I told my cousin why I didn't like her profession. Middle school English teachers, and the one tool they have that destroys people's confidence in their ability to do the public speech is the oral book report. If I had my say-so, I would remove the oral book report from any middle school ever. Because let's work on one basic premise in this. Middle school students are horrible, horrible people. I mean, I've been in middle schools, I've been in high schools, I've been in colleges, and middle school students are terrible people. Why? Because nobody is comfortable with their bodies right then. And the way most middle schoolers, or a lot of middle schoolers, deal with their own insecurities is attacking other middle schoolers. So you're going to take a bunch of people who are at their worst point in their entire lives where they're ever going to be when it comes to body image, when it comes to self-confidence, when it comes to self-esteem. You're going to give them no training in public speaking at all. And these English teachers are going to say, well, you can speak, you can do a public speech, get up there and start talking. Would we ever take a middle school student and say, I know you've never been trained in playing the trumpet, but here's your solo. Go stand in front of 500 people and play this instrument you've never had before. You listen to music, you'll be fine. And what that does is it takes a really horrible experience, or potentially horrible experience, where you have no training and it imprints on you, the public speaking makes me sick. My middle school book report, it was a book called Crossing the Switchblade. It was easy. It was a book about a guy who in the 1970s went into an inner urban area to lead a ministry. I will tell you, I did so bad on that book report, there was the potential that I would never do public speaking again for the rest of my life. But then I became a sophomore in high school and found out that I could stuff. The only thing I hated more than public speaking was PE, because the only thing worse than just the general middle school student is guys in high school. I did not enjoy PE because you had to change clothes in PE, and it was just not a pleasant experience when you're taking PE in the 1970s. My sophomore year, I found out if I took public speaking, I could get out of PE. And I had a fantastic speech teacher, Patricia Bailey. She was also the high school debate coach. She recruited me onto the debate team, changed the course of my life, literally. Okay? But there was that potential, that previous experience. I was sitting in church one day. We usually got there a little bit early because the adult Sunday school classes, we would drop the kids off, go to the fellowship hall, have some coffee, go in and sit down. Sanctuary kids would catch up with us. And my youngest daughter, Colleen, was 10 or 11 at the time. She comes in with a piece of paper. I'm going like, what's that? She goes, well, I get to do the reading today. And I went, how come you didn't tell me about this before? Because we could have practiced. She goes, oh, I just found out about it. Well, hold on a minute. Wait, what? I just found out about it. Because so-and-so who was supposed to be doing the reading today apparently didn't show up. I was going like, and I said, can I see that? And it was like, it wasn't any new modern, it was like the King James. I went, what's that word right there? She goes, I don't know. Can you pronounce it? No. And I said, really, how do you feel about doing this? She said, I told Miss Karen I didn't want to do it. But she said that I had to. And I'm going like, you don't have to. Do you want to do this? She's going like, no. And I went, okay, give me the paper. So I went and found Miss Karen. I walked up to her and I said, hey, I would appreciate it before you ask my children to do something if you would come talk to me about it, or at least have me there when you talk to them. Because Colleen feels like she's been forced into doing this. She goes, oh, no. We don't have anybody else to do it. She said, yeah, I know. She said, so-and-so didn't come. She goes, oh, no, it's not that they didn't come. I forgot to ask them. I'm going like, oh, okay. So let's just do this. This isn't going to happen. My daughter's not reading that. She's not doing the reading today. She's going like, why not? And I'm like, because she's 11 years old. You picked a long selection from the King James Bible, and there's a bunch of words in there she's never even seen before, and you haven't given her a chance to practice. If you called us a week ago and said, could she do that? Yeah, we'd sit down and practice with her, and it would be fine, but I'm not putting my 11-year-old in that situation. And needless to say, there were some hard feelings, but I didn't care. Not my hard feelings, because I didn't care. I was looking out for my kid, and that's all I cared about. But you could probably, whenever I ask anybody, what's the first time you remember giving a public speech, I hear the same thing. Middle school English class oral book report, reading in church, at my Boy Scout troop, at my Girl Scout troop, the same things over and over again. And I ask, what preparation did you have before you got up there and gave the speech? And everybody says the same thing, none. So there's that. Then hand in hand with that is level of skill. Level of skill. We think because we speak, we can publicly speak. And it's a completely different animal. Okay? While in SBC 205, I stress dialogic theory, where you are a more effective public speaker if you appear to be having a dialogue with your audience and you're receiving their feedback. In truth, public speaking is not speaking in front of people. Okay? It's different in that level of skill and how often you get to practice, and how much of an opportunity do you have to build your confidence in your own skill level has a huge impact on your level of performance apprehension. Okay? A couple of ways to deal with it. Number one, develop a communication as opposed to a performance mindset. Okay? In other words, I'm here having a conversation with these people. I need to talk to them. I am having a dialogue, a conversation. And if I think of it as having a conversation with people, even though I'm meeting certain structures with public speaking, if I think of it as having a conversation, I will be more effective and I will feel less stress internally. Second of all, Try relaxation exercises. When I give a public speech and it's going to be something where I find it stressful, I do some relaxation breathing. Do this self-hypnotic technique where you start relaxing. You just sit there and you think, I am relaxing my toes. And you feel and I do it all the way up to the top of my head. Relax all those muscle groups. It takes about 10 minutes. There's cognitive restructuring where you literally sit down and list the pros and the cons of public speaking. And next to the cons, you show how likelihood there. I'm going to throw up. Yeah, you're not. I'm going to pass out. You're not. My voice is going to crack. Nobody's going to notice. And you go through it and you just very logically approach it. Finally, there's training. Okay? Just taking public speech classes. Joining public speaking groups like Toastmasters or the Chamber of Commerce. Here's the last thing that's going to help you. But go back and remember, there are no hacks. You can't cheat this. And you can't cheat it with alcohol or improved pharmacology. Especially amateur pharmacology and amateur herbology. Okay. This is something you need to know about performance apprehension. You guys have ever been to a horror movie, you know that it's not just boom, 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 slash, 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 kill, kill, kill. No, they kill somebody immediately, bah! Just to get you freaked out, right? And then nothing happens for like 15 minutes. And then they spend 2 or 3 minutes building up, and somebody else gets killed. And then they let it go. And nothing else happens for 10 or 15 minutes. And then they kill somebody else. And then it's another 10. And then it's another 5. Because you can't hold that level of stress. You attenuate. Okay? And you just go, oh God, is he killing somebody else? Okay? Performance apprehension works the same way. This is going to be stress level. And this is going to be time. This is going to be infinity. I haven't done an infinity sign in a while, so. This will be 0 minutes at the start of the speech, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Okay. Before your speech, you will go through what is called the anticipation phase. Where your stress levels will be a little heightened. Now, how long before the beginning of the speech does the anticipation phase begin? At what point? That varies from person to person. I had a student a couple of months ago come to me and tell me that their anticipation phase began when they went to the enrollment center here at Aiken Technical College and enrolled in a nursing program and found out they had to take public speaking. She said as soon as she found that out, she got queasy. And every time, every semester, when she had to register for classes and she saw that she needed SBC 205, she got queasy. She had been enrolled here for 3.5 years when she finally got around to taking my class. It can be argued that her anticipation phase was 3.5 years long. Okay? I get that. Usually, though, when we think about it, we focus on those few minutes leading up when you're in a situation where there is no way to get out of giving the speech. You've shown up at the venue, the person that's speaking before you, you're being introduced. There's something specific that is going to be really hard for you to try to get out of it now. Okay? When you get up to give the speech, you enter the confrontation phase. the confrontation phase. Now, the confrontation phase is where everything, you're up there, you're in it. Your heart rate's elevated. You're sweating all over the place. Your mouth is dry. You've got butterflies in your stomach. You're feeling nauseous. You went to the bathroom twice before you came into the room, and now 15 minutes later, you got to go as bad as you've ever had to go before. Okay? Your feet feel like you're standing in puddles of water. All these things that usually I go through everything, and I get like 30 symptoms of performance apprehension. All of that is kicked in. Here's the thing though. Without additional stress, your body can't maintain that. It's physiologically impossible. So somewhere between the 2-minute and the 3-minute mark, you're going to begin to relax. That adrenaline is going to burn out of your system. Those sugars are going to be used up. Okay, I took when I was teaching over at the Army Cyber Center, I had to go through a teacher certification class, which was no big deal to me. But for a lot of other people, it was a very stressful event. And I gave this talk. We had to give a 15-minute class. I gave a 15-minute class on performance apprehension. Okay? And one of the things I said was that in about 2.5 minutes, the stress, the confrontation phase would end, and you would begin to attenuate into, and we're going to get into this in a second, adaptation. So there was a lady in our class who went by V, okay, who was out of the class with us. I gave the talk. She came back in, and one of the things you did, it's called murder boarding, where everybody gets to throw stuff at you about things you could have done better. Okay? People have very little to say from me because I was just so damn good at it. But when V got up to speak, you could tell she was pretty nervous. You couldn't tell that she was on the verge of throwing up. You couldn't tell that she was on the any number of other things, but you could hear that she was speaking a little bit more high pitched than she normally did, and that she spoke much faster than she normally did. Up to about the 2.5 minute mark, when suddenly she went from talking like this, and we're talking about something very important today. Now, let's get into the detail. I mean, it was literally that much of a shift. She took a deep breath at about 2.5 minutes, and everything about her presentation changed. And the funny part was, when all the other people in the class said, okay, let's, murder board V's class, V's briefing, what's your first impression? 5 people raised their hands. And they said, yeah, what's your first impression? That 2.5 minute thing Vic said was right on the money. And the other 4 people went, yeah, that was going to be my comment. It was actually easy to see it happen. And if you have videotapes, if you ever have a chance to videotape yourself speaking in front of a crowd, you will see that happen. So anticipation, confrontation, adaptation, you are going to survive it. Confrontation phase ends. Okay? All right. So let's talk about how you can deliver a speech. There are 4 basic, what we refer to as methods of presentation. Number 1, reading from a manuscript. Reading from a manuscript is exactly what it sounds like. You have a script to read. The speech is written down word for word, or nearly word for word. Okay? It's great when, I've given a lot of manuscript briefings. When you're working for the Department of Defense and you're briefing the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, your boss does not want you going off on some wild tangent. They give you what to read. Okay? It's really great if the language and precision is important. It's really great if you have a very specific time limit. But what happens is, a lot of times when people read manuscripts, they go, today we are here to tell you about the latest implementation of the economic plan to improve, and they never look at the audience. Even if you're reading a manuscript, remember dialogic theory. You need to be having a dialogue with the audience. Okay? Second thing, very similar, speaking from memory. If you ever can get out of speaking from memory, get out of it. It's very difficult. Here's the reason. People don't memorize 8-minute speeches. They memorize 16 30-second speeches. So when something interrupts your speech, you can't just start back where you were. You have to go back to the beginning of that last thing. You'll see people saying, and the great thing about our economic package is going to be, and there's a car backfire, and they go, damn it. There are several downsides to our economic package, and the first of these is... The great thing about our economic package is, and then they start over. So there's that. Second thing, what if you look over here on the right-hand side and you see 5 people going like, what the hell? What are they talking about? You can't back up and fix it. You just have to go. That's also a problem with manuscript reading. Now, speaking from memory allows you to make great eye contact with the audience, but it can also be very difficult, and it can also have some very bad outcomes. Okay? There's impromptu speaking. Now, an impromptu speech is where you're given no notice that you're going to give the speech, or minimal notice. And everybody's done an impromptu speech in this class, and everybody looks at me when I say that, and there's actual people here. They go, I've never done that. I'm like, yeah, you have. It's called a job interview. Okay? When somebody says, what's your greatest weakness? Oh, my greatest weakness is I'm too dedicated to my job. Okay? That's an impromptu speech. Key thing to remember about impromptu speech. Don't feel like you have to start talking as soon as they stop asking. Okay? Take a second. Take 5 seconds. Start off by repeating the question. Say something innocuous that gives you a chance to think. When I interviewed for my job here 3.5 years ago, I guess, the question I got that came completely out of left field was, technology is changing the way all of us teach. What's been the biggest technological change to teaching public speaking? And I just looked at him and I paused for a couple of seconds and went, wow, that's a question I didn't really anticipate. I use technology in my classes all the time. I really think probably the one with the biggest impact has been YouTube. And I will tell you, I hadn't thought of YouTube until like the second before I said it. But I gave myself 15 to 20 seconds to think of an answer. Okay? Finally, the one I'm going to recommend to you always, extemporaneous. Extemporaneous speaking is where you have notes, but you don't have a script. You've practiced a lot, but you're still engaging with the audience. And since you don't have an exact script, you can change what you're doing as you go through. If I'm standing up here and I'm going to give a 10-minute speech with just 2 note cards, okay? If I'm going to give a 10-minute speech for a manuscript, I've got like 8, 10 pages. So when I look at everybody and say, oh, look, it seems like everybody already knows this stuff, right? And everybody goes, yeah. And first of all, with a manuscript, I've got, all right, here we go. With an extemporaneous speech, I go, that's great, and I just switch to my next note card. Okay? With extemporaneous speaking, your language is going to be less precise because you don't write the speech out. Okay? But you're going to be able to engage with the audience more. It gives you a lot more flexibility to adapt to the audience. You can adjust to the audience while you're speaking, and you're speaking in your own words, so it's easy to remember them. Okay? And the disadvantage is your language is less precise. Now, let's talk about nonverbal delivery. And we're going to talk about, I think we've got a whole chapter on nonverbal delivery later on in the class. Or maybe we don't, or maybe we don't. Anyway, 3 things you need to remember. Be animated. And I don't mean act like a cartoon. I mean act like you have some energy. Okay? Be conversational. Don't change your speaking style. Be a bit more formal, but don't use vocabulary that you don't normally use. Articulate well, but don't pick up words you don't use. You're going to look uncomfortable using them. And then finally, act like you care. Do you need to care? Oh, hell no, you don't need to care, but you need to act like you do. Okay? That's nonverbal delivery. It's that simple. I would normally tell them, I spend a whole class and I reinforce over and over again in public speaking how you do that. But the 3 things, if you remember this, be animated, be conversational, and act like you care, your nonverbals will be fine. All right. Nah, don't care. Don't care. Okay. Let's talk about language for a second. Clarity. Let's talk about articulation. Is the clarity of the sounds you make. When we speak, we've discussed some of this already. We compress, we contract the muscles in our thoracic cavities that forces air out of the lungs through the larynx, also known as incorrectly as the vocal cords, up into our mouth, where we use the hard palate, the soft palate, the tongue, our teeth, and our lips to form sounds. Okay? How we use all of that to make those sounds clearly is how we articulate. Okay? Now, all of us are inarticulate to an extent. When my wife and I were just saying, my wife is from Vermont, I believe I've mentioned that before. When she came down to my hometown, Homewood, Alabama, we bumped into an old high school friend of mine. Richard. I said, hey, Rich, how you doing? How's your mom and them? And my girlfriend at that time didn't say anything. The response was, good, you? Good, you? And my girlfriend came out afterwards and said, what the hell did you say to him? I'm going, what do you mean? She said, how's in them? So yeah, how's your mom and them? How is your mom and them? It's just how we ask, how's your family? Now, I have had people here in Aiken County laugh at me when I say that, but I was up at the Walmart in Aiken and I heard somebody say, hey, how's your mom and them? So don't act like you're so superior, Aiken County, with your horses. Here's another one. This is me, and this is the captain who worked for me. Okay? Except he started the conversation. The captain comes in and says, Jeep? Nope. Gonna go? Captain comes up to me and says, Jeep? I said, nope. Gonna go? Later. Need something? Nah. Later. It's a whole conversation. I knew exactly what had been said and what had been communicated. I had this Romanian captain that worked for me. This was a U.S. Army officer, by the way, from Texas. Okay? I had a Romanian captain work for me. He looked at me, he sat there quietly, contemplating, and I noticed him sitting there with just kind of his hand beside his face, sort of shaking his head. And all my Eastern European officers that I worked with always used to call me Mr. Victor. He goes, Mr. Victor, you have said I speak English very well. And I went, yeah, your English skills are actually outstanding. He goes, thank you. Mr. Victor, what the hell was that? Oh, what was what? You and the captain had exchanged words and it was not English. And I went, it was English. It was not. I speak English well and that was not English. Jeep? I went, oh, Jeet. Did you eat? Jeet. Did you eat? Jeet? Nope. No. Gonna go? Are you going to go? And I went through the, later. Need something? Do you need something? Nah. Later. Now, I am not telling you that articulation is the same thing as a regional dialect. Okay? I'm not going to tell you your Southern accent, your English accent, your Canadian accent is bad. What I'm going to tell you is being lazy and using that as an opportunity to mispronounce words is going to diminish your credibility in a public speech. Okay? So articulation is important. You're going to be judged not only on your articulation, but your pronunciation. One of the words that has always driven me nuts, and it's a Tennessee Hill thing, that when my family, my mother's family, who's a bunch of coal miners, moved from the Tennessee Hills, the hills of eastern Tennessee down to North Alabama to work in the coal seams there, the word they brought down with them was battery. I didn't know what the hell that was for a long time. I was a kid growing up. I didn't know what a battery was. It's a battery. Is that an articulation or a pronunciation problem? It's both. But it doesn't sound very well educated, and it would damage your credibility if you're giving a talk to a bunch of electrical engineers and you keep saying battery. My mother's family also calls it oxygen. You know, that stuff we breathe. The correct pronunciation is oxygen. That's not an articulate, it's not a regional dialect, that's a mispronunciation. So you have articulation, you have pronunciation, you have fluency. How do you use the words? How do they flow? How competent are you? Do you have to stop every third word? And this is not, again, if you have a speech impediment or speech difficulties like a stutter, that's one thing. But if you're stumbling over words, especially if you're reading a manuscript, that communicates to the audience you're not very well prepared. And then finally, there's a thing we call the vocalized pause. There's two types of vocalized pause. Number one, there's guttural grunts, which goes to, yeah, well, yeah, yeah. And then there's needless words, you know, I'm telling you, this is, you know, you need to listen to this. I had a student in class, I stopped counting like 15 times when he said, you need to listen to this. He said that every single time. Somebody I know has one that really drives me up the wall. They start every sentence with "for the record." For the record, okay, stop. Nobody's keeping a record. Vocalized pauses. The only way to get over a vocalized pause is to listen, tape yourself. Okay, and listen to it. And there's also my crutch. You guys have already seen it. Okay. And it's, you know, I was fast forwarding through a lecture one time that I had posted just to see if I covered something. And I stopped 5 times in a row just in time for me to hear myself go, okay, 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 okay. And I was going like, wow, if I was giving a public speech, that would be horrible. This is a lecture, it's not a public speech. It's completely different. Okay? See? I've also noticed that I always start, and I've tried really hard to work on this, after I go, you know, Aiken Technical College, your #1 choice for higher education in Aiken County. I've noticed that the next word out of my mouth about 95% of the time is, hey! And I try to stop that. That's a vocalized pause. Okay. Skipping. Okay. Last 2 things. 3 things. Number 1, posture. Think of yourself as a boxer. This is a defensive pose. This is when you're about to get attacked. Your foot is to the back. You've turned it so they hit you on the shoulder. You don't want to get hit. To be dominant, feet shoulder width apart, hands to your side, back straight, head up. I am not threatened by anything that's going on here. Gesture to the outside. There's a picture from, I think, the second Ali Liston fight, where Ali is standing over Sonny Liston, who's on the ground, just with his hands out to the side, screaming at him. It's showing complete and total dominance. Totally. Okay? At a minimum, feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed, knees slightly bent, hips straight, back up, head up, hands. Don't lock the elbow. Relax and gesture. Okay? But don't move without purpose. I've had people that have done this. And when I've told them, stop walking back and forth, they say, well, this shows how casual and comfortable I am. And I tell them, actually, people read that as the exact opposite. You're a duck in a shooting gallery trying to keep people from shooting at you. Okay? And last thing, I don't let people use them in my classes because it's an order of magnitude. Once you get basic public speaking down, you can add in visual aids. But the one rule about visual aids is never talk to the visual aids. The reason I hate PowerPoint and the reason I don't let my students use PowerPoint, here's what happened. Here's my PowerPoint slide. And that's the last you see of them. They spend the rest of the time talking to the visual aid. So do not talk to the visual aids. Okay. Hey! That's it. That's public speaking. Where are we at? 48 minutes. Outstanding. Coming up on 49. All right. That's it. You will get your discussion board will be posted very soon. Don't forget to do that. That's all I've got for you today. If you have any questions, of course, you can email me. We can talk via Zoom. We can set up a person-to-person meeting, a real face-to-face meeting. But you have to set up an appointment to do that. Okay? I'm on campus most days, 11 to 1. All right? With that, let me know if you have any questions. Stay safe, and we will see you soon.